All righty, guys, we are here live today again. Thank you for hanging with us here. I know this is kind of the first stream, really the first stream we've done on Saturday night, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. I hope you guys enjoyed the live interview we did with Blake Young, CEO of New Canoe. If you haven't watched that already, definitely check that out. I've got the replay on the YouTube channel as well as the Facebook pages. And so we're going to go ahead and get started here. So the topic that I chose for today is going to be stability. And the reason being, I know we've already done a most stable kayak video before, but stability is something, it's probably the most asked question that I get is how stable is it? And a lot of times we'll get asked about different kayaks and different setups that really don't even compare to each other, but people really only want to know how stable it is. Well, the question for today is, how stable is too much, or can you go too high on stability? And if you are, what are you sacrificing? Because there is a sacrifice with kayak design. First of all, I just want to shout out a couple people here. Fishing the Mid-South is first, so congratulations. Appreciate it. Good to have you guys here. And then New Fishing, New, you were here for the Blake Young interview as well. Definitely appreciate you guys tuning in for that. So we'll get into some, when we get more people on here, we'll get into some more announcements. I've got some more guests lined up that I'm really, really excited about. Definitely in the kayak fishing and just the kayak industry. So we'll kind of go over that here in a little bit, but kind of getting back to the stability. So again, usually people that are starting out, or that people that are just, like I said, just really starting out, searching for that first kayak or that first quality kayak, that's usually the first thing that you're asking is, I want something that's stable enough to stand up in. I want something that is stable enough to fish from. And that is absolutely important. That is probably, your comfort would be a close second, in my opinion, and then stability. You want something that you can move around in. You want something you can stand up from. I don't stand up personally a whole lot in kayaks, but I do like a higher seating position. And you're probably the same way.
Yeah, if I want to stand up, I'm paddleboarding.
Yeah. So again, I like to stand up and stretch out, but there are some kayaks out there that I feel like are designed for stability over everything. They may not be the most comfortable, but you always want to keep in mind your paddle performance. Even if you're not paddling, I'll explain that here in a little bit. So I know the industry is kind of in a transition there. A lot of us, including myself, are getting into the motorization, getting into trolling from spot to spot, and then wanting to stay there and fish really hard. When you go too high on your stability rating, you're really sacrificing that maneuverability. And if a kayak doesn't go through the water really well, doesn't paddle really well, that's also going to be the same resistance you're going to meet with a motor or with a pedal drive or anything like that. And what's that going to do? That's going to draw on your battery a lot more. That's going to tax your motor a lot more. So how much is too much stability? Elizabeth gives a good point here. So the unlimited is stable. It's wide at 41 inches wide. It doesn't paddle terrible. To me, the unlimited is really an upgraded Frontier 12. It does paddle better than the Frontier, longer. It does kind of give you a little bit better tracking performance. But another really important point here is it is heavy. So that's also something that I definitely want to touch on, as well as stability, is what other factors should you look for? You want something stable, yes, but you also want something that's going to maneuver, and something, how are you going to transport it? How are you going to move it from your vehicle to the water and vice versa? Do you have a wheeled transport system? Do you have a trailer? Because a lot of these kayaks are getting some of them exclusively for trailers. But that's always something, because we see it all the time. Budget is just not an issue with some people, and they see something that they like. It checks all the boxes. It looks great. You can do everything with it, but they get it out. They take it out a few times, and they just bought a 150-pound kayak, and it's just them sometimes that want to go out and fish. Well, if you really, if you're dreading loading and unloading something, you're just going to find a reason not to use it. And you'll see that a lot on like Facebook Marketplace and a lot of these sites where you're selling things. You'll see something that somebody just rigged up. They got the motors, bow, stern, or both, the electronics, and they're trying to sell everything all as one package because you can tell they just didn't use it. They might have went too far too quick and really really kind of let the pocketbook move faster than their actual physical needs. So,
something that he didn't mention that I think a lot of people need to consider as well is what kind of water are you on? That's one of the other questions that we're going to ask somebody when they walk in and they're talking about stability. And so that's kind of one of the things that that I kind of stress a little bit more on for one reason. And I'm going to give an example of something that we heard this week. We had somebody call us and ask, hey, I want to upgrade. I have a Pesk 10. I want to upgrade to a more stable kayak. And the first question we had was rivers, lakes, both. What is it that you're wanting to do?
Yeah.
And this person was super interested in the Outlaw, which is stable, 100% stable.
The Perception Outlaw.
The thing that I kind of sat there and am thinking about, I'm like, okay, so why get rid of the Pesk 10? Like, what was it? Well, we found out a little bit of the backstory. Probably was on water that shouldn't have been a little bit more wavy than normal for the area that we're in, because we're not on the shore or on the coast. And one of the things that came to mind immediately is you want to do lakes, sure, but you also want to do rivers. Mm-hmm. And one of the things is, yes, that Outlaw is extremely stable, but if you're wanting to do rivers too, it's going to be that much harder to turn. And him and I, we've had some mistakes made in the last couple of weeks on the Buffalo. And what we learned really quickly is, we were both in RVRs, so can't say much about, the stability piece on that. But one of the things that we learned really quickly was it does not matter if the water's going to grab you, it's going to grab you. And whether your boat is stable or not, water comes over, you're going in.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing to kind of consider. So there's that balance of wanting the stability, but knowing the type of water that you're on. And then also recognizing that when you're stable, you're sacrificing some of that maneuverability as well.
Yeah. And in the case of the Outlaw, I think the Outlaw is a great kayak. It's been a little better value in the past few years than it is really currently, in my opinion, because you're kind of getting into that $900 price point when you're getting a lot of what I would consider high or mid-level kayaks, or high mid-level, the Jackson Bite, the Native Falcon 11. Like, there's a lot of really good quality kayaks in that space. And the Outlaw is a perfect example of stability over maneuverability. Not that it's a terrible paddling kayak, but there are so many better kayaks in that same space. And it's just the way the hull is designed. Chris Funk here, the Feral one, if you guys haven't checked his YouTube video out, definitely do so. But I like primary stability, but to me, secondary stability is most important. I don't mind a little movement when I'm paddling, especially in current, but I want to lock in when I stand. That is a very, very good point. So those are your two kinds of stability. Your primary, which I call the initial wiggle. That is when you're sitting flat. Everything's reversed here. When you're sitting flat, that is your primary stability, is how you feel when you're flat. And I'm the same way, Chris. I like primary stability, but I like knowing I've got some secondary. So Jackson does that very well. Bonafide does that very, very well. And Liz, your new canoe does the same thing. Those ridges on the sides, when you lean, you'll feel that second set of arms, or that second leg, or whatever you want to call it, that second set of resistance kicking in. And a lot of people, when they're standing from a kayak, and those of you that also, if you follow me on Facebook, I shared a video that Chris did here a while back, and I thought was really important to today's conversation, talking about exercises that you can do for your stability, because we're not all the same on our stability. And there are some really simple exercises that you can do to gain that stability, because it's not always just the kayak. When somebody asks me, is this kayak stable, or can I stand in this kayak? Well, that does depend on the individual. It's not so much the kayaks. Part of it is the kayak, the way it's designed, but some of it's just the individual. Some of us have better sea legs, And there are things that you can do to make that better, standing up more in a kayak or doing those exercises. So if you follow me on Facebook, check that video out that I shared of his. I thought there's some just really good points made in that. Those of you that don't know Chris, Chris has worked alongside Jackson Kayak for a long time. We're setting him up to be one of our next guests. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Him and his lovely wife are going to join the two of us. We're going to nail down a date for that. And I've got some next weekend. I've got Jameson Redding set to be on the show. And then the week after that, I'm looking at the gentleman who is the COO of Big Adventure Company. Big Adventure is bona fide and native in Dagger. We're going to have him on the show. He's going to talk about talk about the industry, talk about Big Adventure's, place in that industry and kind of what the future looks like for them. So definitely excited to bring some more quality guests on here. And then, of course, more announcements will be coming down the road as we go forward. Those of you on, if you haven't already, please hit that like button. I'll kind of get all this out of the way. That pushes the video, that gets us out to more people. And, what you got there? Does the shape of the stern of the kayak affect the stability? Squared off compared to tapered? It can. It can. Really, the squared off versus tapered. Tapered will help your tracking. Just my personal experience, my opinion. Having that nice exit point is, to me, almost as important as having that really good entry point. You'll see a lot of those really sharp keels on a kayak. Some of them will have what I call that bulbous front end. That is really meant to punch in the surf. You'll see that like on the Custa X from Jackson, and even the big rig, where if you're getting into some chop, it allows it to pop that front end up instead of diving it down under. There's a lot of research and development. There's a lot of engineering that goes into the design of some of these quality kayaks. That's one thing I say that's probably the biggest difference between a kayak that you buy at a grocery store and the kayak that you buy at a full-fledged retailer is, again, there's a price difference, obviously the way it's made and the quality process affects it, but also how it's made. These are people that's been designing either surfboards, sailboats, kayaks for years and years and years. There's a lot of research that goes into that. There you go. Yeah, quite frankly, and depends on the body of water. To me, the Flint is one of the better river kayaks. But if you're out there on wide open water and some surf, the Pursuit is really probably the better one of the two on that, just for the fact that a little bit longer, a little bit wider, and probably their fastest paddling kayak out there.
PDL 120 from Dennis.
First kayak I purchased a few years ago was a Field and Stream Shadowcaster. I just purchased my first pedal drive in the Old Town PDL 120. Stability was my concern. So again, the PDL is very, very stable. But Old Town, just like a lot of what I would call your top tier, your Old Town, Hobie for the most part, Jackson, New Canoe, all the, Bonafide, Native, all them. There again, you're going to get a stable kayak, but you're also getting a lot of engineering. Old Town's been doing it for decades and decades and decades. And their PDL drive, I took out that same kayak. I did my walkthrough, but I also took it out in the water, and I really liked it. My favorite part about the Old Town PDL, honestly, was the short crank arms on it. I thought that was a lot smoother for your longer leg individuals like myself. And I felt like it was a lot smoother because of that. I definitely, we're just kind of getting into the early stages of being an Old Town dealer. And that was kind of my first on the water experience with the Old Town, other than paddling around the Big Water 132, which I enjoyed also.
Not that one about.
Hey, well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yes.
Want to start taking my 70 lab, and it would be a good stable kayak, mostly Florida lakes. So the question I would ask on that is, how far are you wanting to go? So we talked about the Perception Outlaw, talked about the Jackson Bite. The Jackson U-Pick to me is probably one of the better paddling kayaks for a dog. It's 12 foot 2 inches long. It's got a padded deck. My favorite thing about the U-Pick though is the fact that you can trim the seat forward and backwards. So if you got a heavier dog like that, you can move your seat back a little bit to kind of level out your weight. Obviously, it's always going to depend on how active that dog is. So if that dog likes to run around, if he gets nervous, or if he likes to swim, if you got a dog on the water, we have labs ourselves. We always suggest using a life vest for the dog, preferably the one with the handle on top, just so you can get them in and out of the kayak easier. I also like the low sidewalls.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to mention, because I had a U-Pick when my dog was still able to come with us. She's got arthritis pretty bad in her back now, so those days are over for her. But the thing I loved about the U-Pick, because we'd been on a couple kayaks with her, and she started off paddleboarding. And so when I put her in the U-Pick, the nicest thing about that compared to like the Perception Outlaw, because she's been on that one too, was the low sidewalls. It made it a lot easier to get her back into the boat, because, you know, labs, you can't exactly keep them out of water.
Well, most of them, yeah.
Yeah.
And that was, we did a video. It was the one I did where I took the Perception Outlaw out and I compared it to the Ascend 133.
Yeah.
And big shocker. I really preferred the Perception Outlaw a lot more. But we had our dog Zoe, which is her oldest dog, and she loves to swim, and she just kept constantly going back and forth from me to her. And you could see I'm sitting there talking, I'm going through the features of both kayaks, and you can see this spur torpedo going into the side of the kayak, and it kept climbing up and climbing on. And it made for a funny video. So the looser the better. And again, what David's talking about is that looser primary stability. And again, you know, David, Uncle David Outdoors, which he's got his own YouTube channel out there where he does Buffalo River float trips, overnight trips. And when you're talking about rivers and creeks, again, I like something a little bit looser. I like something that I can turn and maneuver around a lot quicker, because the biggest difference between something like that and your stable craft, you're stable, but to me, and the best analogy I can come up with is going to be, do you feel like you're controlling the boat or the boat controlling you? Because the bottom of that kayak is always going to want to stay parallel to the water surface. And if you get in some choppy water, that kayak is going to be just going back and forth if it's built for that primary stability. It's going to want to stay straight on that water. Well, if that water's moving, the kayak may not tip over, but it may throw you out of it. So just keep that in mind. No clue what kayak to get, pedal or not. It'd be nice if it had an option to upgrade. 6'3", 200 pounds. Stability is a concern. With the back problems, I need a comfy, high adjustable seat. Any suggestion? Honestly, I'd probably go New Canoe. The only reason I say that is New Canoe's platform, they allow you to add a pedal drive, to add a motor, and they're not terrible paddling kayaks. Specifically 1500 or under. Honestly, the U10, which is a new kayak coming out, that's the unlimited 10 foot. It's actually 10 foot, 10 inches. So it's a little bit more 11 foot. And, you know, I'm not sponsored by any kayak company. I've got my preferences, and I've got things that I see people really enjoy. For that price point, that kayak really turns well. It paddles decent. It's not going to track that straight line paddle as good as, say, the 12 foot, the 12.5 foot kayak does. But honestly, that one there, it's stable. It's got a high seat position. It's got a swivel Millennium seat on it, which is phenomenal, which a lot of people love. That's what I would go with, depending on, again, they're extremely stable. The biggest thing is just wondering what kind of water you're on. If you're in big open water, if you're on small lakes, ponds, if you're wanting to do some rivers. I always ask the lake or river question. A lot of people like to do both, but there's always a primary use. What is your primary use? Are you primarily going to be on that calm, flat water, or are you going to be on some moving water? And rivers can be long pools of calm, flat water, but they're usually connected by shoals that you'll get into that class 1, maybe a class 2 every now and then on there.
So with this one, I will tell you, seats make a difference, but also the walls on the side
Yeah.
make a difference. Because I know him and I were at Hollow Bend probably 3 weeks ago now.
Which is a wildlife refuge in central Arkansas.
And I was in the U-Pick and he was in the U10. And when he was in his Unlimited, we kind of ran into the same thing. Is with the higher walls, he would get blown around a lot more. Where I'm still catching wind, but not near as much, and it's just simply because of the walls on the kayak.
Oh yeah. And you know, the Outlaw, you will get that a little bit too. Even though the Outlaw doesn't have those high sidewalls, you are sitting so high up that you will get a little bit of that drift from it. I always tell people, if you're wanting to fish and you're not covering a whole bunch of ground, you're always going to really like to have an anchor. There's a lot of different anchors. There's a company, The Bomb, which makes those little round iron anchors. We love the ones from Anchor Wizard. They do, it's called the 6-pound radius anchor. It's like a little acorn that's coated. It's like a lead 6-pound anchor that literally just fits in the palm of your hand. I'm not a big fan of claw anchors just because of wanting to stick, you know, it'll stick in something. We got a video coming up with our river trip where, you know, the mistakes were made type thing. And, you know, I gave her my good anchor. I took the old claw anchor that I've had forever that I don't use a lot. And sure enough, I got it hooked on something and in current. It wasn't a dangerous situation by any means, but it could have been in a different surrounding there. So
yeah, and in that video that he's talking about, or on that trip, also we were with Uncle David Outdoors. He managed to stay in his kayak the entire time. He hit a tree.
What an amateur! What an amateur!
He hit a tree and ended up in the water. Went down a shoal, ended up in the water, and I nearly hit my face in a tree. So I ended up in the water as well. So I think David was the only one that stayed.
You're on the river. That's what you're supposed to. You're supposed to do. We hit some trees. It's okay.
Yeah, and the water was about 55 degrees, so it was a little cold.
Yeah, I mean the first, and again, I've got a video that'll be coming out soon on that. But you know, it just a really stupid thing. My confidence in a kayak just, you know, that'll get you complacency, and overconfidence will get you in trouble. But I had a stump here that was in the middle, and then there was a little water passage on this side, and then the main channel was over here. I was trying to make it over this side, and there was a current going in the front, and I saw everything, and I knew it was going to happen, so I just tried to oversteer. And what happened is that current hit the nose, put me right into that stump. When I hit it, it swung me, and again, not a big deal. Yeah, I fell over the side, but that claw anchor that was hanging off the front of it hooked into that stump, and we're in current. And my lures, had treble hook lures on the end of my fishing poles that were sticking out of the front. It got hooked in that rope, and when I reached down the front, I got hooked really, really good on my finger, grabbing that. And again, I'm just trying to get my my claw anchor out of there. I'm blessed with a high tolerance for pain, so I'm taking the hook out, you know, carefully. I'm not wanting to rip my finger off, but you know, again, my own stupid decisions. There's always a good lesson to be learned there. One, don't use claw anchors in moving water, and two, keep your good player pliers. Make sure, you know, because when you dump, all of your gear is going to get scattered. Nothing's going to be where you left it, and it just never fails. If you got something sharp on your kayak and you're grabbing for stuff, you're going to grab it. It's going to get you.
Dylan, I have one question. How in the world were you paddling in the high position? I don't do well in the high position in Jacksons in general.
Yeah.
I tend to be in the low position. So, I mean, props to you for paddling in the high position, because especially with the Kusa and how close together those foot pegs are, I always kind of feel a little weird.
X.
Oh, that's right.
Is that Dylan? Is that an OG Kusa, or is that a Kusa HD, or is that the Kusa X? Because if that's the original Kusa, that's even more difficult.
Yeah.
For the high position.
Either way, me and Jackson's in the high seating position don't get along very well. I always kind of feel it's not terrible. It's just I always feel a little bit more comfortable being in that lower position.
So I'll agree with that to an extent. And the only reason I say that is, to me, there are so many used kayaks out there right now. And in my opinion, the market on used kayaks has really kind of burst. So the days of people getting new prices for a used kayak are really kind of over, and there's so many of them, they're really oversaturated. But what that's going to do, and just from my opinion, is I would rather see somebody buy a used quality kayak than buy a brand new kayak from the grocery store or the farm supply store. And you guys know who I'm talking about, obviously, but you know, you're going to get more longevity. I know a lot of people like to buy your cheaper made kayaks to get your feet wet a little bit, see if you're going to like it. But if you're spending that much money anyway, you're good. I would want to assume you're going to like it. Buy a quality kayak, and then if you don't like it, you can get rid of it just like when you got it. Sell it on the used market, get what you can out of it, and you're not looking to lose a whole lot of money. There's obviously an advantage to buying new. Obviously, you're going to have warranty. If you're buying it from a paddle shop, which I definitely suggest you do. I know even some of the manufacturers that I represent, they're doing a little bit. Some of them are kind of dipping their toes in the direct to customer, and I think that's going to bite them. Time will tell on that. But your paddle shops are people like me, people like Christina, people like Uncle David Outdoors that works with me at the store. We're there to get you in the right kayak. We don't work on commission, we don't. I don't know how other paddle shops do. I would assume they don't, because that would be a really feast or famine type deal there. But really, you're going to talk to people who that's all they do is paddle shop, or they paddle, fish, whatnot. And our job is really to get you in that right boat for the right price. We're not looking to put anyone in the poorhouse. Not everybody needs a $5,000 Hobie. I get that. But very few people are going to enjoy a $300 or $400 kayak from the grocery store. And a big thing with that, again, I'm not going to go too far on this, but buy from somebody that can get you parts too.
That's a huge one. I'm just going to throw this out there. I love the fact that he throws me in with him and David, like I work with them.
Yeah, you work there. You work.
I don't officially. I don't.
Not officially. No.
Not officially. I don't. I have my own day job, which I really like. But I enjoy working with the two of them exponentially. I enjoy the things that he does, which is really talking to all of you about what you're interested in, what you want to. Where you want to be in terms of fishing and in terms of on the river or on the lakes. My love is being outdoors. And so this was just kind of a natural progression for me. So it's been really fun.
I've not. Now we used to sell Hurricane. They're two-piece, but they're fiberglass. They're really, really good. They're really, really nice.
Oh, I know. I know.
Yeah. We had that Hurricane that I repaired at one time. We have not. And again, not saying they're great. They're great kayaks. Our area here is very river and lake heavy, and those are great lake kayaks. Very similar to Eddy Line that you see a lot of stuff out there about. It's just wide open exploration. Paddling is not the most popular thing in this area. So we don't see a lot of touring kayaks. We don't see a lot of your 17 footers. They're a blast to paddle. They really are. But, and admittedly, I'm 99% fishing, and I fish heavy. I fish really heavy. I want it all. I want it all on the kayak. So that's just kind of my sickness. Let me tell y'all though, working or managing a paddle shop does not help that whatsoever. It makes it worse, because there's always something coming out. There's always something coming down the pipeline. I've heard some stuff coming from some of the manufacturers. I can't share, obviously, because I enjoy my job, but there's some stuff coming down the pipeline that I'm really excited about. And right now I've got a bona fide PWR 129 in the back of the truck that I'm kind of taking out for a day or two. Looking forward to that. She's going to be in her Hobie Lynx, which she really loves. And like I said, I like trying them all because obviously it helps me talk about them with you guys, helps me sell them at the store, and just kind of give my, there's things I like and things I don't like about every single kayak out there, just about. So.
It's a sickness, because since he started working at the store, I think every anniversary or birthday is, hey,
every one of them.
Let's trade in and get a new kayak. We've done that literally for the last 3 years.
Yeah, our anniversary is coming up next month too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know what's up. You know what's coming.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, finding parts of the Shadowcaster to chore. Again, that's and I know I've gotten to, I'm bad about that. I'm never going to down talk a kayak that somebody else already owns. But if somebody's looking at some things and I'm gonna give my opinion on something, again, never take my opinion as the gospel. It's me personally. Just also see a lot of customers come in that have owned these kayaks. So maybe I don't have experience being on the water with some of the off brands, but I see a lot of customers that have bought them, what they don't like about them, because remember, they trade them in. We do trade-ins. That's a huge advantage to knowing the competition too. So if somebody's in a Feel Free or a Vibe or any of those, you'll know really quick when you see a kayak that's been moderately used for a couple of years, and you start to see a lot of the same common things going wrong with these kayaks. And again, even if they may be less expensive than some of the quality brands out there, but that's still a lot of money. So I strictly fish, but trying to keep it light for now. Right now, my Kusa. Yeah. And Dylan, I think honestly, I think the industry, and I know I've said this before, the industry, in my opinion, is starting to move back to what I call throw and go. And I think a couple of people, when I say throw and go, they think I mean like just cheap stuff. No, I mean lighter, more utility.
Links.
The Lynx that she's in is extremely light, and especially for a pedal drive. Native makes the Propel 10. I think the Propel 10 is like 62 pounds without the drive in it. In my opinion, Jackson Kayak really pioneered the river and creek fishing industry with the original Kusa. I've told my Jackson rep, both past and present, you guys got to get back to that. I know why they can't make the Kusa, because that's Drew Gregory's boat, and he's with Crescent now, but the need is there. So Bonafide's RVR 119, Crescent Sholey, the New Canoe Flint. These are all really great river kayaks, and they sell amazingly well. But again, I'm talking about this area here, North Arkansas, South Missouri, Northwest Arkansas. There's rivers and creeks everywhere, but we're really blessed here. So for us personally, it's a big thing, but you can go 100 miles in each direction and have a completely different need. Maybe some areas sell more offshore, like your touring style kayaks. So you'll definitely know that. You'll definitely know that when you see my channel, kind of what our niche is there. Yeah. And again, it happens. I don't, he wasn't an employee of Jackson. He worked alongside them, helped them design some kayaks, and found again, I don't know the particulars, if there was anything behind the scenes there. I doubt it, but you never know, of course. But again, Jackson still makes a good kayak. I think that Jackson is kind of in a bit of transition right now, but I definitely have all the faith in the world in Jackson. I think they're for a little bit. I think they got a little too hung up on whitewater kayaks, and they kind of took their eye off the ball a little bit on the fishing and just wreck friendly kayaks. But I think they're getting back into that though, which I'm happy to see. What's going on, John? Appreciate you coming by, buddy. Let's see, Slayer Max 10, no issues a few times, got out on it. Yeah, I mean, Slayer Max is great. The Titan X has kind of taken all the thunder from Native here lately, I think, but a lot of people still don't really talk about the Slayers. But the Titan X's are great, but they're also the ultimate stability. So the Titan X 12.5 and the 10.5, it's easily the most stable kayak I've ever been in, ever. Like, and it's not even close. But it's also the caution that I tell people is that's also a kayak that is guilty of what I tell people when they ask me, why don't this company do this or why don't this company do that? Well, it adds weight, aluminum gear track, metal seat stands, reinforcing it on the bow and the stern for motorization, internal battery compartments, all of that adds weight. And the Titan X at the 12.5 at 172 pounds, when we unloaded were you with that unload with that Native? You weren't? Okay. No. Thank God. We got the first shipment of Titan X's from the factory. And when we got them on the ground in our store, the website didn't even have an official weight. We didn't know what was coming for us. And people were asking me, I kind of did a reaction video on it, and they said, well, how much does it weigh? Like, well, I don't know. I'm thinking like 130, 140 pounds, 172 pounds. And they're wrapped in like a t-shirt material. So there's nothing really to grab onto. And that came off the back end of a freight truck into my chest. I'm like, oh my God. It was bad. It was bad. But again, great kayak, but man, that thing is heavy. Facts. That thing is the closest thing to a boat that I've seen in the kayak market. Yeah. Again, I'm not knocking it. It's nimble. I turned about an 8-foot circle at speed. So it's very nimble. It's not what you would consider a large kayak, with a big wide turns. That thing turned really, really sharp.
The big thing with the tight necks that you have to think about is how you're going to transport that thing, because I promise you, if David is there, this girl is not carrying it. It's going to be him and David. Oh. And I use that. I don't work here to my advantage on those days, but I mean, that thing, it's heavy. We've moved it around, and it's heavy.
Yeah, it is. I feel like Crescent's doing a lot of, I mean, don't get me wrong, Crescent, we took out the Shoaly, and again, I don't have a lot of experience with their other stuff. I've heard a lot of things, and it's ironic because we're talking about a stability video. They weren't the most stable kayaks in the world, and it reminded me very much of the Kusa. So very rounded hull. It was extremely maneuverable, extremely nimble, and what you want out of a skinny water kayak. The problem with it was, and again, we were on some really calm water when we did the Shoaly versus the RVR video. We paddled it around. I talked about how the stability, the speed, the tracking, the turning, and all that good stuff. There's some things they can do better, but also, again, just like I said before, there are some things that every single kayak and every single company can do better. So there's pros and cons to everything. The only thing that I was really hesitant about was when you're going through those really shallow shoals and you hit some rocks or you hit something that will roll on you. And that's one thing I did like about the RVR 119 from Bonafide. I like that secondary stability. I like the fact that you can kind of lean into those turns and it catches you, just like Chris Funk was saying earlier. I like that catch. I like being able to lean it and into those and keep, hopefully keep from overturning, but not all of us can be saved, right?
I'm going to chime in on this one just a little bit, the Shoaly. So one of the things that I didn't necessarily mention really well in that video was looking at the Shoaly and the RVR. I was in the Shoaly first, and I was actually fishing off of it for a while. And then we swapped, and he was in a completely different location. And having been in the Shoaly first and having gotten so used to it, when I got into the RVR, I will say that it felt like a boat to maneuver. Yeah. Because they are that different in terms of their maneuverability. And the RVR is not that way at all. I mean, I own one now, obviously. And it's just, I just remember night and day difference is just how I felt like with that primary and secondary. I mean, I have pretty good sea legs, and I felt okay with that very loose primary stability. But the RVR, I'm sitting there, I was like, I don't know how I'd ever flip this thing over. Well, I figured out how to do that. So,
well, in your defense, though, you hit a tree, like not with a boat with itself. That had something to do with it.
Oh, it was funny.
It was not the kayak.
Oh, it was funny.
Mine, it was all me. Like, so when I hit a tree in the middle of the highway head on, and then I hooked myself, and then I soaked about $500 in video equipment.
Yeah. He'll include that. Yeah. He could not find his batteries. So he looked at his video and saw his little GoPro battery on the bottom of the Buffalo.
That bothers me to no end. Has nothing to do with the money price. I hate the fact that I've got batteries sitting in the river. I hate that. That bums me out more than anything. I can replace batteries. Not that I'm rich by any means, but I would much rather have held on to batteries and lose fishing gear or something that's not going to. I'm a big believer on keeping the rivers clean.
There's one thing to be said about that. Both him and I had our Black Pack Pros, And one of the things I was making sure to do, especially after he dumped the first time, was I was locking it every single time after I pulled something out. So when I dumped, I managed to lose my catchboard and my paddle. I caught my paddle, don't remember how I did that, and then trying to hold on to the boat because it was cold. Like, I don't remember falling in. He told me I fell into the right. I thought I fell left. So when David told me to let go of the boat, I saw my catchboard and grabbed that. So like in two hands, I grabbed my catchboard and my paddle, and it was kind of funny.
Yeah.
I mean, we were very lucky, especially with him with that claw anchor. I don't think we'll ever take a claw anchor out on Buffalo ever again.
But here's the thing: I know better.
We both know better.
Still did it. Yeah. Yeah. Really interesting here. So I wish Jackson would make the big rig with motor mounting ability on bow and stern and take the pedal drive out of those. That is one thing I do wish they would have done in the past before they discontinued it. Before, you had the big rig HD FD, and then you had the big rig HD, which was the paddle version. I think making the paddle version again with a bow mount capability would be a really, really good idea. You can just flatten the nose, very similar to what the Kusa X does. So the Kusa X does have that flat spot where you can put a motor mount on it. I would really like to see them do that. A big guy kayak that can accept motors is really kind of the industry standard now. And I think Jackson does things like that really better than most, in my opinion. So definitely, I agree. Jackson hasn't done much other than the Kusa X in the last couple of years. I would be surprised if they went a couple of more without doing anything. That's what excites me is, again, nothing that I know personally or specifically, but these companies aren't stupid. They've been around for a long period of time. I guarantee you there's some drawing board and some composite sketches, some things going on behind the scenes with these companies. Hobie excites me, not because I feel like they want to. I feel like they need to. Jackson excites me for the same reason. Jackson's been a little stagnant. They've kind of taken not a step back in their quality, but a step back in their offerings. So they've kind of shrunken their lineup a little bit. I'd really like to think that they're going to kind of rethink some models or redesign some things. And, again, Bonafide and Native, they're kind of this is kind of their year, in my opinion, that, 2024, the PWR, the Skiff from Bonafide, the RVR last year, Native coming out with the Titan X. Again, the Titan X is what, $600 less than a lot of the other pedal drives that are comparable to it, and even less than the Pro Angler. To me, it's the best prop drive that's under the Hobie umbrella there. So, as far as prop drives go, I think that is the best one right now. But again, you've got it's not head and shoulders above everybody. So Old Town can come up with something new. They can redesign the Sportsman series. I'd like to see that. The Sportsman series has been, in my opinion, kind of unchanged. I did like the new color scheme you saw with the lure color, that real bright lime green, yellow, and orange. But there's some stuff coming down the pipeline. I think it's going to be really, really nice for the industry.
There's a lot of people talking about the Nar too. So the Nar hurt Jackson, and then the last comment or two.
Yeah, I think I think really what Jackson did was they made something maybe that wasn't what people were looking for. It's not that it's a bad kayak, but it's a fast kayak. And I think when people were looking at that specific kayak, that really wasn't what they were concerned about. You want some speed, obviously, but I think they were, and I know Jackson has said this, they really kind of thought that they thought the capacity was going to be more than it really ended up being. And they actually had to change the capacity on the website. They had some deck flexing issues. They had some issues there in the beginning that they kind of fixed, but I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with the Nar and the big rig kind of in that same space. So they're both around that $4,000 price point. They both kind of are big open water kayaks, the big rig being, your big dude lake fishing kayak, and the Nar being that little bit more nimble, speedy, but let's be honest, if we're in 14-foot, 150-pound kayaks, motorization is really going to be where it's at. I've done more motors on kayaks this year than I have in the previous three years combined. So that's where it's going. Love it or hate it. But with a fishing kayak, just put in a little trolling motor on the front. Not a huge deal, but it does kind of open up some doors for people, I believe. But yeah, the Nar, I said I wouldn't say it's a huge swing and a miss, but it's a foul ball. You can make some changes to it, but I kind of wonder if they might just be resetting too. I just don't know with them.
With the Nar and the big rig, what he was mentioning about kind of almost occupying same space.
Yeah. 2 big gorillas in the same room.
It kind of reminds me of what was going on when they had the Coosa, the Liska, and the U-Pick. You had 3 kayaks that were all kind of in the same price range.
Yeah, the price range, absolutely.
And I mean, Liska and Coosa probably a little bit more similar than your U-Pick. Your U-Pick's a little bit further off from those two, but same ideas. You have a bunch of kayaks kind of taking up the same niche.
I'd give anything for them to bring back the Liska. I think so. What she's talking about is it was in 2021. Jackson had like 8 different kayaks in the same in with all of them were within like $500 or $600. So you had it was the Coosa, the original Coosa, the Coosa HD, the U-Pick. Let's say Liska, and then you had the Bite Angler, and then you had the Kilroy HD. And they didn't come out with the OG Kilroy yet, but in 2021 there was a lot of kayaks, and all of them were between $1,100 and
like
$1,600. So all of those kayaks were in that space. So the Liska was between the original Coosa and the U-Pick. The U-Pick was only $1,299 in 2021, and to me, a lot of people preferred that open deck space there. Yes, and I think it just got overshadowed. It got overshadowed by a couple of kayaks, and a lot of people knew the Bite. A lot of people knew the U-Pick. A lot of people knew the Coosa, especially. And the Coosa, the last year the Coosa was made, I believe, was $1,349, and the Liska was $1,399. So for $50 less, you can get the ultimate river fishing kayak. But I would argue that the Liska was a little bit better performer just in comfort and stability. And I'm not talking about Outlaw stability. I'm just talking about stable enough. I think it was really kind of ahead of its time. And the story behind the Liska is phenomenal. The Liska was named after the designer one of the design guys that helped design it. And I think he passed away in like a skiing accident, like an avalanche accident. And they built the boat in his name. And that's where it came from. But that was something that they had been designing for a while. And I loved the story behind it. And I've never sold a Liska to somebody that they were just like, I took it out. I just really wasn't feeling it. They said, I absolutely love this kayak. So,
and when I remember when I was looking at the U-Pick, I was looking at the Liska too. And the only reason I didn't go with the Liska at that time was just because of the Black Lab that we were toting around with us. But the Liska definitely, I mean, I know when I upgraded to the RVR just recently, I remember thinking, I'm like, and I had asked him, I was like, do you guys have any used Liskas? Just because it was something I was interested in.
Yeah, I took a Liska down Crooked Creek here locally, and I was like, wow, this thing is great. So their rudder steering system, I agree. I think there was, and I could be wrong on this. I haven't asked Jackson on this, but the steering, it seemed like it is quieter. I don't know if it's a coating that they did on so they got like that little, and I'm talking about the Bite and the big rig too. It's got that little slider system. And that was always my complaint too, was if you're fishing, you're wanting to be quiet, you're wanting stealth. And with that slider system, the drive is a lot quieter. The Mark IV drive, I can't say enough about Jackson's Mark IV drive. It's a lot quieter, it's faster, and it's definitely more durable than the previous generation. But when you're banging around that handle on the side, that slider system, that's literally like beating the drum underneath the water. And I've noticed on the new ones, I don't know if it's a coating that they got around it or something, but it is quieter. It's not quiet, but it is definitely quieter than that previous design. So I think somebody listened to that. But yeah, I would like to see like a turning wheel, a lot like you see on like the Hope, really any pedal drive. I think that's really unique for the steering assembly, just having a slider system going back and forth there. But this kind of got into a big Jackson discussion here. But yeah, and Jackson, and honestly, I knew we'd talk about Jackson a little bit because, in my opinion, Jackson is one of the best companies for stability without sacrificing the paddling, the handling, the how nimble they are. You get like a perception with the Outlaw. It's really bulky and it's got that tri-hull design, so it's got those pontoons. That's really where the sluggishness runs, but it also where you get that extra stability at. The Jackson Bite is the same length as the Outlaw. It's pretty much the same width. The Outlaw sits up a little bit higher, but it's designed for that. To me, now that the Bite being $9.99 and the Outlaw is now $9.20, now, because I remember when the Bite, or I remember when the Outlaw, I remember that was $750 just a couple of years ago.
Yep.
And so to me, now that they're both around that same price point, I'm going to point people to that Bite every single time when they're talking about, even if they're just talking about lake or they're talking about lake and river, slow moving river.
Yeah, you're gonna get more maneuverability out of the Bite than you will the
and it's all how the hull is designed underneath there. It's a lot smoother. You can definitely see where you still got their stability cradles there, but man, it skims over the top of the water a lot easier. It turns a lot quicker. It does have some sound. Now I can't speak to their older design. I know Old Town's done some changes to their lineup. I don't know that they've done a whole lot of changes to the engineering of their actual pedal system. But they went from the Topwater series to the Sportsman series, and basically I think what that involved was an upgraded seat, some upgraded riggings on there, and just kind of the name change, which all companies do that. Sales start to get a little stagnant, and I think you just need a change. It's very similar to the Kilroy with Jackson and the Tripper 12 with Jackson. It's the exact same hull. They're just less gear track on it, and it's able to kind of keep the price point a little bit lower. Honestly, have you been in any of the new ones? They have changed that. Specifically the X, they've changed the deck. They raised the deck a little bit, which helped a lot. And they've also they've moved the scupper holes back. That's what was really making that in some of those older models. And I know exactly what you're talking about too. It was a little front heavy, and what was happening was they were coming up to the scupper holes and moved to the front of the boat, and you get like a little puddle action up there. So I definitely know what you're talking about there, but they've definitely fixed that. Yeah. I mean, again, the Coosa HD was a great boat. It's kind of like one of them things where and again, Jackson has discontinued the Coosa HD. The Coosa X is, if you can get past the weight of the kayak, it really, really paddles very, very well. And it's very comfortable. I'm not a fan of where their foot pegs are placed, but that's a different story there. Very stable, very maneuverable. But again, a 100-pound creek fishing kayak is kind of hard for some people. The RVR is 85 pounds, so it's not extremely light, but it just seems easier to carry.
The handles.
Yeah, the handles. Even it's heavier than the Crescent Shoaly, and I would argue it's actually easier to carry around than the Shoaly. We experienced that firsthand when we were carrying it to the river access. If you're on skinny water and rivers, you're not going down most of the time. You're not going down these manicured boat ramps. You're going down some rough terrain. You might even be dragging them through the woods a little bit. So. Yeah, and Bixby is another one of those companies, just simple plug and play systems. I think you're going to start to see a little bit more of that, I think, for sure. But very interested in Kilroy. Do you think they could measure? I think you could measure bass on 26 catchboard in the cockpit. Yeah, I mean, I use a Tripper 12 is my go-to for creeks. The Tripper 12 is the exact same hull as the Kilroy. It's just set up different. It doesn't have the gear track on it and stuff, but I carry a 26-inch catch board all the time on it. I don't have any issues with it. It's and I just did that video on hybrid kayaks. So hybrid kayaks, obviously the video is focusing on the Old Town Next and the native Ultimate FX 12, but the Tripper 12 is absolutely in that spot. The OG Kilroy is absolutely in that spot. There's a lot of other kayaks out there in there, but those two was kind of the more popular ones. I love the Tripper and I love the Kilroy. I just feel like it's gotten to a point where it's priced itself out of its own market, because I think those are both, or the Kilroy is kind of discontinued, but the Tripper's $1,500. I think that's because the RVR is $16.99. I mean, and that's the most modern fishing kayak out there as far as skinny waters. You can motorize it. You can, it's got integrated anchor systems that you can install on it. Like it's got all of that on it. That's a good question. I like the Kiowa a little bit better for paddle performance. The Hobie Quest to me is like, it reminds me a lot of the Tarpon, with maybe a little bit better seat. It's got that little adjustable lip, the seat bottom, and it's got that high back seat, and as opposed to the padded, round that the Wilderness System Tarpon does. But the whole design of it reminds me a lot of the Tarpon, the Tarpon 120, namely. But the Kiowa, the Liquid Logic Kiowa, the 12-foot personally is my favorite, just paddlecraft. The 10.5 is amazing on skinny water. It's not the greatest fishing kayak just because there's not a lot of gear track, not a lot of storage options. But if you're looking just for paddle performance, that Kiowa, I think that is really kind of surpassed a lot of your recreational kayaks on the market there. And namely, it's got great stability while also having an amazing tracking paddle performance, turning, it does really everything really good. You're starting to see that frame seat kind of bleed over into the recreational market as to where that was primarily a fishing kayak accessory there. Yeah. Again, I can definitely see that. I've seen a lot of people, I don't know that they sell that anymore, but they used to have those covers that go over the top of it. I think that would help. I definitely get that. And the Tripper 12 is very similar too. It's got a little bit of an enclosed nose, but it can get wet in there. It's always good to carry like a little light sponge or something. And I've never, again, I'm not going crazy water either, but you can always kind of dry it out really easily. Get you a sponge that tethers to the seat or something. I've never had enough water where I needed a bilge pump, but bilge pumps, you can buy those for like $10-15. You don't need to go high quality electronic bilge pump. You got those little pumps where it just shoots it out like a squirt gun. I like the Recon. The only thing about the Recon is you can motorize it. I'm not the biggest fan of Perception's Helix Drive. And the only reason I say that is it is the Helix Drive. So Perception's pedal drive kayaks do definitely fit in that lower price, that lower budget, but you are getting what you pay for there. So it's a lot of plastic parts. It's not something I want to run into things with. And it does have a tendency to move around in the boat. It's not the most durable design ever. The Recon as a kayak, the Recon, the hull is very, very good. It's very stable. It's also really maneuverable. They use, I think it's called the Smart Hull technology, where they specifically designed that kayak to maneuver better than you would expect. Because to me, the Recon and the Jackson Big Rig, to me, remind me so much of each other. They both have that really large hatch. They both have that really rounded nose and just very, very wide. And very stable, because they're built for a specific person. They're built for, bigger kayak anglers that like to take a lot of gear. But I've seen people put bow mount trolling motors on them. I've seen people put the stern mount. They make a rudder kit for them that you can do the foot control steering. So it's still relevant, but the Recons have really been passed by a lot of other kayaks in that same budget area too. So they don't have as much traction as they used to, but I still think that's a really quality kayak. So I want a great paddling 13 to 14 fishing kayak. Most people in fishing want big and stable, which means heavy. I have a Titan X with a Torpedo, but I still live a good, man. I'm right there with you. And again, big and stable and heavy. You have the top of the food chain there. So a great paddling 13 to 14 foot kayak.
We throw and go.
Yeah, lighter. Well, I mean, when you're talking about 13 to 14, you're going to have a little bit of weight. Personally, the New Canoe Pursuit is 13 and a half feet long. I tell you a really good one just for paddlecraft is Liquid Logic makes one called the Stingray 13.5, and it's meant as a tandem kayak, but there's a lot of people that run that as a solo. It's very lightweight. It's got a lot of really good rocker to it. It's got a frame seat on it. You can throw a second seat on there. It comes with, it's a tandem, so it comes with 2 frame seats. And it's the same seat that you see on the Ultimate FX12 and the Native Falcon, and the Liquid Logic Kiowa. It's the same seat. Really, really good. It's very basic, so there's not a lot of bells and whistles. There's not a lot of gear track. There's no adjustable foot pegs, but the price point is phenomenal. You can buy the 11.5 Liquid Logic. The Stingray 11.5 is $799. And it's $12.99, I believe, for the tandem. I'm not sure on the tandem price, but I know the 11.5 is just $799. Cuda 14 is a great one too, if you can find it. They stopped making that a few years ago. That was something I think that a lot of people want Jackson to get back to. It had its issues, obviously, and the Commander. That I hear, I don't have personal experience with the Commander. That is one that I hear a lot about. And I actually think that I was talking with Chad Hoover, and he was actually, I guess, part of some of the design on that kayak. But that is, that's a really good design. I've seen pictures of them. I haven't seen one used, which could tell you something there. People are keeping them, which is always. Yeah. I don't know that they make the 145. They make a tandem tarpon. The tarpon 120 is one of my favorite paddling kayaks. Again, the 105 tarpon is probably one of the better seller ones, but the tarpon 120, I feel like if people paddled those side by side and did a comparison, I feel like about 70% of people would prefer the 120 over the 105. People, we call it getting in a river state of mind, where people prefer those really short kayaks, thinking they need to maneuver in that really tight spaces. When people have been traveling the local rivers in 16-foot long canoes for decades. So again, not all 12 to 14-foot kayaks are made alike. They're not all river capable, but there's some really good options out there. Well, guys, we're at the hour and 3-minute mark. So check out the channel, YouTube channel. We're dropping a video tomorrow. We're comparing the Jackson Sweet Cheeks seat cushion to the kayak cushion. We had a lot of fun doing it. I really like the way it turned out, and you might be surprised at how viable the Sweet Cheeks is versus the kayak cushion. We were definitely surprised. So definitely check that out. That'll drop here 7 a.m. Check us out next Saturday, 7:30 p.m. We'll have Jameson Redding, formerly on Jackson Kayak. He runs a YouTube channel called The Road Trip Angler. I've always liked doing stuff with Redding. We did a collab with Wendell Fishing, where we did the criminally underrated, fishing kayaks, where Wendell did the pedal drive, I did the paddle, and then Jameson did inflatables. So Jameson, he's one of the guys that helped design kayaks for Jackson. He was on their marketing team there for a while. And has done a lot of different stuff. So she's in the video. She is in the video. Again, we had a lot of fun doing it. But, I'm going to remember that. that we may have a new nickname for you.
Okay.
All right, guys. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Again, please hit the like button if you like the content, if you want to see more of it. It's free to do. And it just helps us kind of get out to a bigger audience there. So thank you so much for coming by here, and we'll see you next week. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Have a good week.